Welcome back as we continue our survey into the First Testament, looking in this segment and the next several into the book of Genesis. You know, there was a time in Western civilization when virtually everyone was familiar with the Bible. I mean, even atheists understood the God that they rejected, but that's no longer the case. Now, I think there's still at least a measure of interest in the Bible, as witnessed the frequent reference to the Bible in secular media, cover of Time magazine, Newsweek, and so on. When I think of the book of Genesis, I think of Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3, as sort of the key verses. Picking a key verse, suggesting a key verse is always a challenge. But as we survey through the book of Genesis, I think you'll come to understand why. I think Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3 are the key verses. They read, "And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and so you will be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse." Then here's the bottom line. "And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed." So there are a number of top line items in that promise, but the bottom line, what Moses is declaring, what God is saying here, is that this story forward is going to be centered around this project of bringing the blessing of salvation to all nations. So another thing I like to do is to think of a key word that kind of encapsulates a given book of the Bible, and that's a challenge too. There's nothing inspired about this, but I'm going to suggest that promise is a key word. Now, it's not explicit in the text, but it's implicit based on the centrality of those two verses that I just read to you to the overall narrative. All 50 chapters, but chapters 12 through 50 is focused on how God is unfolding this promise to Abraham, and through Abraham to the nations. As we look at structure of the book, I want to ask you to always be looking for the seams, where the tailor has put the garment together. It gives you some clues to the author's design. We can't actually look at his initial drawings or I guess you don't call them blueprints, the patterns that were used to cut out and then to sew along what line and where to put a dart and so on and so forth. But watch for those seams. The book of Genesis, we talked previously about seeing movements in this grand symphony throughout the First Testament. And you'll recognize that Genesis comprises the first two movements of the whole Torah. You have the prologue, Genesis 1 through 11. There's the Eden movement. And then the promise doctrine, chapters 12 through 50, there's the election movement. And the book, past the prologue anyway, well, no, from Genesis 1 on, the book tells the story from Adam to Israel. We begin with Adam in the first couple of chapters, and we end with Jacob, his name now changed to Israel, dying in Egypt and looking forward to having his body moved back to the promised land. Now, there is a literary device that marks off sections of the text, and that's the repetend, Ele Toledot. These are the generations, or this is the account. You'll find that occurring 10 times in the book of Genesis. It shows up in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, And this is the account of the heavens and the earth. In chapter 5, verse 1, this is the account, or these are the generations of Adam. In chapter 6, verse 9, Ele toledot Noah. In chapter 10, verse 1, Noah's 3 sons. These are the generations of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then 11 kind of is hoggy on this. Chapter 11:10, these are the generations of Shem. And then 11:27, these are the generations of Terah. 25, verse 12, the generations of Ishmael. 25:19, the generations of Isaac. 36:1, the generations of Esau. And 37:2, these are the generations of Jacob. So there is this repetend, this phrase that gets repeated over and over again to mark out sections, and you could tell they're not equally divided, sections. We've got 50 chapters, 10 of these markers. They're not divided off into 5 equal 5-chapter units. Now, there is some disagreement as to the function of this phrase. Namely, does each one introduce a new section, or does it function as a colophon to conclude the previous section? We do have examples of these sorts of repetends in other ancient Near Eastern tablets, and those tablets just start right on their subject, and they use the colophon to form the end of that section of text. In the Hebrew Bible, it doesn't seem to be used quite that way. Oftentimes it's introducing the section of text, and we'll see that as we reflect on our reading through. Another comment I wanted to make was about the Hebrew convention of naming biblical books. In Hebrew tradition, they would just use the first word or phrase in the given book, and that would be the sort of the catch line, the catchphrase, to let the reader know what book they are in. In this case, the book begins, Bereshit bara, in the beginning, God, Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created. And so in good Near Eastern fashion, the book is just referred to as Bereshit. Translated in the beginning, and you can see in this case the Septuagint translators followed suit when they entitled the book in Greek, and it comes across into our title, Genesis, the beginnings. And indeed, the book of Genesis, particularly in the prologue, presents the beginning of the world of matter, of life systems, and of humankind as the apex of that creation. Think of, you're reading in the first couple of chapters, it's the beginning of heaven and earth, the beginning of flora and fauna, the beginning of the human race, the beginning of marriage and family, of Shabbat, the beginning of sin, the beginning of society and culture, and of the nations, and of Israel, and the beginning of redemption. Last but certainly not least,